Hey everyone, I'm Amy Connell. Thanks for tuning into Lessons to My Teenage Self. This is the shortcut you need to thrive in your physical, mental, and spiritual health. As a personal trainer and nutrition coach, I'm passionate about empowering you to find your best version of health. Each week, we dig into one topic that I wish I had known as a teen. We are continuing our series on intuitive eating. Remember, these are all episodes I originally did on my Graced Health podcast. If you would like to hear the full version, go over to the Graced Health podcast, season 21, to listen. Today, we are talking about principle number 2, honor your hunger, with Victoria Yates. Victoria Yates has joined me today. Let me tell you a bit about Victoria before we get on. She's a registered nurse, certified health coach, and certified intuitive eating and body image coach for women, specializing in women to stop dieting and love their bodies through learning how to eat intuitively. With all the pressure to eat perfectly and have a perfect body, it's no wonder that you feel stressed about how you should eat. Amen to that. Victoria teaches how to have a healthy lifestyle built on the science behind intuitive eating and deepen your relationship with yourself so that you never have to go on another diet again. And all the people said amen to that. Victoria, welcome. I'm glad you're here.
Thank you so much, Amy, for having me.
Before we get going, I would love it if you would share high level what this principle means.
Yeah, so as you already shared, honoring our hunger, honor your hunger is the second principle of intuitive eating. Honoring our hunger is a pretty foundational aspect of intuitive eating. And I think, first thought, it's pretty self-explanatory. We want to eat when we're hungry. And what I find, though, for a lot of people, and so maybe people listening are thinking this when it comes to honoring your hunger, I find for a lot of people, they kind of write this one off because they think, oh, I do that. That's actually like too much of my problem. I honor my hunger way too much. And I encourage people listening to not write this off and to look for what you can learn here, because I actually find that for a lot of people, even the people who say, oh no, like I don't struggle with honoring my hunger, in honoring our hunger and, on the flip side, people often say more so, oh, I have a hard time feeling my fullness. They go hand in hand. And so it really is important to really understand our bodies. And really, that's what this principle is all about. It's about feeling confident, knowing when you're hungry, knowing what that feels like in your body, not questioning. I think a lot of times we struggle with like questioning, like, am I really hungry? And then we, put it off and, or we're like, hunger is kind of this badge of honor. And so we kind of push it away and we just like suppress it and we, try to get by eating as the least amount possible. And we drink the coffee and the diet soda and the seltzer to try to like not be hungry. And so I always tell people, if they're coming to me and saying, oh, I really struggle with like the stopping when I'm full, the first thing that we always look at is, all right, are you honoring your hunger? Like, are you really honoring your hunger? And so a lot of what we work on is, okay, getting back in touch with those early hunger cues and what those are for each individual person. And then also just like getting rid of that fear of eating too much, eating too often, and really building that trust with their bodies when it comes to hunger.
Yeah, that's good. And as you were talking, you said a couple things that I want to thread together because as someone who grew up in diet culture, I mean, that was just all around us. And it takes a while to kind of relearn our thing. I mean, one thing is when you talk about staving off your hunger, I feel like diet culture has taught us that hunger is bad. Yeah,
Yes.
this is something that we don't want. And so you drink the seltzer water or well, have some water and just make sure that and then wait 30 minutes and see if you really are hungry. And I feel like that does, you're right, it does go hand in hand with so many of our stories of I got up, I had a quote, good breakfast, a light breakfast, and then I had a quote, good lunch that was not enough fuel. And then we find ourselves consuming the entire pantry at 4 p.m. And it's because we have not honored our hunger and because that is almost a bad word in diet culture language because you're trying to avoid it rather than respond to it. I would love for you to kind of guide us through this spectrum of hunger. So maybe there are some things that we are missing that are signs of hunger that maybe we didn't realize even were.
Yes. Hunger is a spectrum. And so we have early hunger cues and late hunger cues. So your early hunger cues are going to be a lot softer, less pronounced. And so for a lot of my clients who, they're not used to letting their hunger be the thing that guides them to eat. They're used to, oh, it's time to eat or whatnot, like everybody else is eating. And so they're not used to actually letting their bodies be the thing that is guiding them eating. They might not even notice these early hunger cues, but they're going to be a lot less pronounced than the late hunger cues. So early hunger cues are, typically kind of like more of a slight emptiness in your stomach. It's not going to feel like so grumbly, but it's going to be just like a slight emptiness that you notice. And then some other like really common early hunger cues that people usually don't realize are actually hunger cues is just starting to think about food. So sometimes we like have that. And then again, if we think hunger is bad or I don't want to eat it, we're afraid to actually like eat because we think, oh, that it's too soon. We might not even notice that. We might think that that's a bad thing, but that is actually our body giving us the cue. It's time to start thinking about putting a meal together, putting a snack together. So starting to think about food or just starting to get distracted really easily. And what late hunger cues are, like I already said, they're a lot more pronounced. And so ideally, we want to not wait this long to eat, but it happens, right? We're not perfect. We don't have to be perfect at this, but typically, this is where people, especially people who aren't in touch with like those early hunger cues, this is going to feel a lot more uncomfortable. So you're going to be feeling that really uncomfortable, like stomach growling, like feeling like your stomach is just like doing somersaults in your belly. Um, Also, mood changes. So that's where you start to feel hangry and maybe some dizziness and just just some changes in, again, how you're feeling. And it's just a lot more pronounced. So the analogy that I really like for this that I think is really helpful is imagine that you're at home and you go to visit your neighbor's house. You know that your neighbor is there and you see their car and you see the lights on in the house, you know that they're there. When you first show up at their door, what are you going to do? You're just going to slightly knock on that door, right? You're just going to do like a slight, like, okay, let me just like, I'm not going to be banging on the door right away. So this is like, I like to think of that slight, small little knock on your neighbor's door as those early hunger cues. So when we're experiencing those first signs of hunger, it's like your body is just doing that slight, like, hello, it's almost time to eat. And then, in that same analogy, the more that time goes by and your neighbor's not answering the phone or not answering the door, what are you going to do? You're going to be pounding on that door and be like, hello. So those are like more of the late hunger cues. So you can kind of think of that image when you think of early hunger cues versus late hunger cues. So that is kind of that explained. But yeah, like I said, we want to work towards eating more with those early hunger cues and really just not being afraid to even get it wrong. I really don't think there's no getting it wrong. I think what trips people up a lot of times is they get so concerned with doing it wrong. And I mean, that's how we learn. But typically, those are kind of the differences. Early are going to be a lot less pronounced, late are going to be a lot more like in your face. And that's where you're going to feel that urgency to eat. And, we talked earlier about the reason why we don't want to wait to those early hunger or late hunger cues is because it's going to be a lot harder to eat mindfully. It's going to be a lot harder to, put together a balanced meal that's going to feel really good in your body and fuel your body well because, that's where you're going to find yourself like, I just need to get food in my body right now. And you might find yourself, at the end of your meal or that snack being like, I didn't even really want that because we're not able to think as clearly. We're not able to make as intentional, mindful choices and decisions when it comes to eating. So, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, that's all good. And I like the analogy of knocking on the door. I mean, I'm sitting here right now thinking oh, I could really use some food.
Yeah,
And so
especially because we're
let's talk.
talking about it.
Yeah, I know. I know. Well, I also had like a really early lunch and all of that kind of stuff. But okay, let's go into that. So, what happens when we get into these situations where we want to respond, but I don't really think that anyone wants me smacking their ears while I'm talking with you and they're listening on a podcast? What happens when we get in these situations when we can't honor it? Then what?
Mhm.
Did you know I have a free discussion guide to my book, Your Core Strength? If you have a small group or a book club that is interested in exploring health from a Christ centered, diet culture free perspective, then this discussion guide is just for you. Grab yours for free at gracedhealth.com and click under books and Your Core Strength. You will see it there. Oh, and for the over 40 woman in your life, I have one for her as well with my book, Your Worthy Body. You can check both of those out at gracedhealth.com. That's GRACED health, all one word.com.
I think, first of all, what we can do is we can kind of use that as really just helpful information for maybe the next time. And so I was talking to a client about this actually because she was actually like making herself wrong for eating before she was hungry. So for this situation, what I would say is, maybe next time what happens is, you have a moment before recording a podcast, or if everybody's eating and you're not actually hungry, but you know that it's like this is like the best opportunity to eat, it's still honoring our hunger, even if it's almost like that preventative, eating for
Mhm.
that hunger that's like the future hunger. And that is still honoring your hunger. But like I was saying, this client of mine was making herself wrong for eating, when her kids were eating, even when she wasn't actually hungry, because she was like, this is the best time for me to eat. And I know if I, you know, wait until I'm actually hungry, I'm not going to be able to eat. And so I think, there's a lot of grace with this too, is like, we can, maybe for next time, okay, I'm going to have a little snack going into this meeting or going into this podcast, or I'm going to actually eat with my kids because I know I'm going to be hungry. And that also is honoring our hunger.
That's good to know. Thanks. What about the times when we have sort of conditioned ourselves to be hungry or not hungry based on, what our activity is or how much we've had or something like that? I think we have in our mind, I had a really big dinner last night. How can I be hungry for breakfast? Or, I've just eaten so much. Or when we start questioning our body because logically it doesn't make sense. Can you talk us through this and how to negotiate that when our mind doesn't maybe it's just that our mind doesn't believe our belly.
Yes. I think that what is important to remember is that we are not robots. And I think diet
Yeah.
culture kind of like that's a little bit of the perspective that we have, is that okay, I'm just gonna need this number of calories or macros every single day, like clockwork. And the reality is we're not robots. We are humans, and every day's energy is different. Every day's nutritional needs are different, especially as women, like who
Hmm.
have cycles. We have different needs. We're doing different things in our day. We're more active some days than others, and our body is functioning differently, and its needs are different every single day. And so, I mean, this is why following a strict calorie or macro type diet doesn't work,
Hmm.
because, it's actually, and I think this is the thing to remember, is we've been told, okay, this is all we need every single day, but that is not the truth. The truth is every single day our needs are different. And so I think knowing that can help just like put us at ease when, yeah, it might not make sense. And I think sometimes it might make sense. And I think in those moments, it can be helpful to be like, oh, just like from this curious place, ask yourself, okay, I wonder why I'm more hungry right now. I always like with my clients, we'll explore this together. They'll share, okay, I was like so hungry today. I just don't get it. I would just like couldn't stop eating. And then when we explore it together, usually we discover, oh, I was like super active yesterday, or I don't think I ate enough yesterday. And then today, my body's kind of making up for it. And it's not to say that every day we're going to have that explanation. Sometimes we won't, but sometimes we do. And so I think it's helpful to just be curious and ask like, okay, I wonder what's going on here. And also not be judgmental about it. Just have that like neutrality with it. But I also find it helpful to understand. And I remember the first time I learned about this, it was really freeing and empowering, learning that hunger, the cue and the feeling, the sensation of hunger is literally tied directly to our cells needing energy. So from a cellular level, like when our cells physically are low on energy and ATP, it releases that signal that tells us that sends that physical sensation of hunger. And so it's like that just made sense to me at least. Like, first of all, knowing, okay, every day is going to be different. We're not robots, we're humans. So, I can trust my body and I can trust my body because this physical sensation is real. It's not made up. And that comes with time. That comes with really building confidence with understanding your body and understanding those like actual cues of hunger. But I find that can be really helpful for people, those two things.
When you were talking about those days that I certainly have. I have to imagine my community has them as well, of like, I am so hungry all day long. My husband and I, whenever we have them, we joke. I feel like Katniss Evergreen in the Hunger Games gave such a good language to that. She called it hollow games, or I'm having a hollow day. That's what it was. Hollow days where you just can't. I don't know if you read those books or not, but we read them when they first came
It
out
was a long
a
time ago.
long time ago. Yeah. But it's fun to be able to name it. I shouldn't say fun. That's not the right word, but it's helpful to be able to name, like, I'm having a hollow day. And then, we can normally like have a bigger lunch or have more fat or more protein or, whatever it is. And that seems to help, but it's nice to have the language with that.
Yes.
Okay. I want to spend a minute on fasting because there are a lot of different meanings of fasting. And particularly in the Christian community, I mean, Jesus calls us to fast. Jesus did fast. And I think there are times that some of us will fast for spiritual reasons, but then with the little thing in the back of our head saying, but maybe I'll lose a little bit of weight out of this. And so, what are your thoughts in fasting for spiritual purposes, fasting to get closer to the Lord, to ask for guidance, versus diet culture fasting? And how do those sometimes butt heads? And where can our mind, what kind of mindset shifts can we make to make sure that we're doing it purely for spiritual purposes? So that's a big, complicated question, but I'll
Yeah.
just open the floor to your thoughts on all of that.
I think it really comes down to our intentions, and really only us and the Lord can know our intentions, right? And so I think that our intentions and our motivations really matters. And I think it's helpful to have an awareness that, I mean, diet culture absolutely exists in the church. And I think that going into fasting, like if we can just ask ourselves and just be honest and real with ourselves about what is my motivation here? Is it, the purpose, like you said, the purpose is to seek the Lord and be closer to him, like feel that nearness to him and hear from him and like limit distractions and be, build up that reliance on him. And it can be a really beautiful thing. And also, like you said too, it can also bring about these like very kind of diety thoughts. And so I think, asking ourselves what's my motivation? Asking the Lord, we can always ask him, like, help me to see what my motivation is here, help my motivation to be pure and holy, and be purposeful. And I would say too that I believe that there are some people who in time periods that someone might go through that maybe fasting is not, or fasting of food might not be like the right thing for them, such as like if you're struggling with an eating disorder. I remember I did a fast when I was like struggling with an eating disorder, and I mean there was definitely like a pure intention. There was definitely a pure intention in there. And like you said too, there was also this like, I feel holier than because I can do this, because I have this willpower to like go through this day and not eat anything. And so there was definitely, I admit, like sadly, there was like some selfishness there and pride in that. But I think we can ask the Lord for that intention. Also knowing that like if you have to go through a period of time where you're not able to fast in that way, and it would be better to not, then that's okay too. And there's other ways that there's other things we can fast from. So I don't know. Those are a couple of like first thoughts that I
Okay.
have. Yeah.
Yeah, those are good. Those are good. Thank you for that. So let me ask you this. Is there anything that you are dying to say about honoring our hunger that we have not talked about?
I think it's helpful to understand that it is normal to eat about every like 3 to 5 hours, more like 3 to 4. And so I think that that can be a helpful thing for people to know, like, okay, like I'm just like I'm listening to my body, but I also I can almost anticipate that, if it's been 3 hours and I'm starting to get hungry, that is probably like accurate, right?
Hmm.
So I think that that can be helpful. And also on the same side, if I'm getting hungry a lot sooner than that, it's a really good cue to say, oh, maybe I'm not actually getting full enough at my meal, at the prior meal. So maybe I need to eat a little bit more. So that can be something that I think is helpful. And it's literally because our body's glycogen stores are getting depleted about that time. And so I find that that's help for me, at least. Like I love having some of that science too, to like pair with like the physical of my body, like the physical sensation. Because I think intuitive eating, a lot of people are like, oh, this is all just like woo and like feelings. And it's like, no, this is science-based. And so for me at least, it helps to know like, oh yeah, of course I'm hungry right now. It's been X number of time.
Hmm.
Like this is hunger. This is real. I think that understanding that, okay, our hunger is a gift, and honoring our hunger is a gift that we have like this privilege of, you know, being hungry. I know
Yeah,
that that's not true for everyone. So I say that also to say like that can be a really hard thing. But I think meeting ourselves where we're at, seeing it as like if we're able to honor our hunger, like that is a gift that we get. Having food readily available is a gift and not something that we have to fear.
that's good. Okay, Victoria, you get the last word. What is the one simple thing you want us to remember about our conversation today?
Yeah, so I think the just to sum it all up, I think the biggest thing to remember would be just to see our hunger as a gift and to not be afraid of it, not be afraid of honoring our hunger, and really just looking at it as a way that we can get to know our bodies that God created a little bit better.
That's all for today. Join us next week for Principle 3, Make Peace with Food. Take today's lesson and go out there and live the life God has for you and your amazing original body.